In the town of Redwood Falls, Oregon, people liked to say they knew each other. They waved at stop signs, remembered birthdays, and recognized last names the way some folks recognized old songs. If your family had been there long enough, your roots mattered more than your choices. That belief shaped the life of Evan Holloway long before he ever understood what it meant. Evan was born into a name that carried weight. The Holloways owned timberland, small businesses, and a history stitched tightly into the town's identity. His father, Thomas Holloway, believed blood was destiny and often said family was what you were born into and everything else was temporary. Evan's mother, Lydia, loved quietly and carefully, always smoothing over conflicts and asking Evan to be patient. From the outside, the Holloways looked solid, but inside the house was rigid and ruled by expectations. Evan learned early that affection came with conditions. You showed up, followed the plan, and never questioned the family name. By 16, Evan felt like a guest in his own home. He found his escape at a rundown community center on the edge of town where he met Marcus Reed, a foster kid with a crooked smile and a laugh that filled rooms. Marcus had moved through homes like seasons and learned how to survive without expecting permanence. They bonded over late-night basketball games and shared meals scraped together from whatever was available. Marcus never asked Evan to be anything other than himself, and when Evan talked about feeling invisible at home, Marcus listened and said you don't choose where you start, but you can choose who walks with you. Soon their circle grew to include Jenna Morales, who worked 2 jobs and still showed up for everyone, and Kayla Price, a quiet mechanic with a talent for fixing broken things, including people. Together they celebrated birthdays, helped each other move, and sat through heartbreaks, building something steady without last names or expectations. Evan learned what it felt like to belong, but that belonging came with consequences. Thomas noticed Evan pulling away and didn't like the people he spent time with, believing they weren't from good families and were distractions. During a tense dinner, Thomas reminded Evan that he was a Holloway with obligations, and Evan replied quietly that he had a life. When Evan turned 22, his father offered him a position in the family business framed as generosity but wrapped in control, and Evan declined, choosing instead to study social work inspired by Marcus and the kids at the community center. The rejection fractured the family, with Thomas withdrawing completely and Lydia urging Evan to reconsider to keep the peace. But Evan stood his ground even as the distance grew. For years, Evan lived between 2 worlds, seen as ungrateful by his blood family and necessary by his chosen family. Then Marcus was killed in a late-night accident on a rain-slicked highway, and one phone call shattered everything. At the funeral, Evan stood beside Jenna and Caleb as the only family Marcus had, and Evan delivered a eulogy, saying Marcus taught him that family isn't about names or history, but about who shows up, who stays, and who chooses you even when it's hard. In the weeks that followed, Evan questioned whether distancing himself from his blood family had been a mistake, and when his father suffered a stroke months later, Evan returned home to a quieter house and a weaker man. Thomas lay in a hospital bed no longer unshakable, and their conversations were awkward but honest. Evan told his father he was never temporary, just never chosen the way he needed, and Thomas admitted he thought providing was enough. Rebuilding was slow, with apologies that didn't erase the past but softened it. Evan didn't abandon his chosen family to return home. Instead, he brought them with him, as Jenna helped Lydia organize the house, and Caleb fixed what had been broken for years. And Thomas learned that blood didn't weaken when shared with others, but expanded. Years later, Evan opened a nonprofit in Redwood Falls for kids aging out of foster care and named it the Reed House after Marcus, a place where no one asked where you came from, only where you were going. At the opening, Lydia stood beside Evan. Thomas shook hands with people he once dismissed. Jenna laughed with volunteers, and Caleb adjusted a loose sign. And Evan understood that blood gives you roots. Chosen family gives you wings, and the strongest lives are built when you honor both without letting either define you alone.